Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Through the prayers of our holy fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. Brethren in Christ, Jesus Christ is King. This is Timothy Flanders with the Meaning of Catholic. This is the Terror of Demons morning show. Joined as always by co-host Kennedy Hall. Kennedy, how you doing, brother?
Wonderful. How are you?
Doing excellent. Too blessed to be stressed. It is February 1st.
It is.
Can't believe it's already February.
We're 1/12. We're 1/12 done the second year of 2 weeks to slow the spread.
2020, 2020 2.0.
Yeah.
Yes. 1 year of 2 weeks to slow the spread. Indeed. Yes. Today's topic is what the devil hates most.
Murder hornets.
Yeah. Murder hornets. That's the real problem in the world. So what does the devil hate most? We're going to talk about that in a second. I wanted to mention many people have been commenting on the introduction music, and they're wondering what this is. They think it's Star Wars. They think it's Jaws. It is, in fact, Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, fourth movement. There's a wonderful video on YouTube of Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, fourth movement, that is performed in front of Pope Benedict XVI, and marvelous video that my children love because the conductor really gets into it. So if you're wondering, Dvorak, that's actually spelled Dvorak. I think there's some kind of thing through the R or something. I think he's Czech. I can't remember, but he came over. He was European. He came over to America and he studied American music. And then he wrote this symphony called the New World Symphony, which is kind of based on American musical quality, which is very interesting. But it's a great piece. So February 1st, we are now in Septuagesima.
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye, a word. We have entered the pre-Lent season. So we're going to be talking about the weapons that you need to engage with the spiritual combat for the Holy Fast of Lent. This week, the first week of Septuagesima, if you're following the annual Bible reading plan from the book Introduction to the Bible, the church begins reading Genesis at Septuagesima, and there's more or less through the whole Pentateuch through Lent. So it's a very great time to pick that up. But the first week we have St. Ignatius of Antioch today. Wonderful, great early father. Tomorrow we have Candlemas. Wonderful feast day, the final feast of the Christmas cycle. And this is a great day for kids because I don't know about you, Kennedy, but my boys love candles. That is like their thing at Mass. They have trouble during most of the Mass, but after Mass, we go and light candles. They're all about the candles. So at Candlemas, you can bring your candles to be blessed. Get a special blessing for the candles.
Yep.
I was reading in some family traditions. One fun tradition for the kids is to spend the whole day without electricity, without electric lights, that is. And then you just have candle lights the whole day in the early morning. And usually it gets dark at 5 or 6 p.m. Mm-hmm. So then you have candle lights for the rest of the night.
It's a good idea.
I'm going to try with the kids. We'll see if they like it. Like I said, they love candles. So you guys doing anything for Candlemas? You guys are locked down though, right? You're in the communist brand new world.
Actually, Ontario is the most free. We're the most free place in North America. Freedom is, what is it? Weakness is strength. War is peace. So we're the most free place in North America.
Slavery is freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, we're more locked down than California. I figured that out. But it's a farce of a lockdown anyway. It's a total joke. It's a thing. I mean, obviously, things are officially closed, but there's no enforcement of anything. But anyway, so we are going to Mass this morning because our priests are doing 2 daily Masses. We can have 10 people at Mass. Okay. We're That's part of our that's democratic freedom. You have 10 people at mass. So our priests are doing like 2 daily masses a day at minimum. And we actually happen to live pretty close to the chapel. We're only like 18 minutes away for the drive. The nature of traditional chapel, tons of people drive from far away. That's just kind of how it goes. So a lot of the parishioners don't actually live that close. So to be honest, we've actually been able to get into a few daily masses because there's a rule. Basically, our priests have done it where everyone go to mass every 2 weeks minimum, because it's just like the numbers of how many daily masses, and you have to register. It's a whole thing. It's a government anyway. But if there are spaces available within 12 hours, you're allowed to sign up for as many as you want. That's just how it is. So since we live close, we're able to just pull the trigger quickly and go. So we looked at 8 p.m. last night for 8 a.m. mass this morning, and there was spots available. So we're going to mass. So we're not going to go tomorrow for Candlemas. So we're going to go today, sort of we didn't get to go yesterday. So we're going to go today, sort of, anyway. But then as far as what we'll do for Candlemas, we're going to do like a Christmas, like our last Christmas celebration. We'll, put some Christmas music on and just sort of make it a thing. And I think we'll do the candle thing you just said, because our kids are obsessed with candles. Usually,
it's about the fire for the boys.
It is. Fire. And my one son is a pyro. Like
every boy's a pyro. Come on.
But my one son is really a pyro. Like, the Titus is just like
when it's a danger, like lock away the matches. Keep him away.
Basically. But he's upset. Like Titus, he'll wave it around. It's like, oh, it's fire. That's cool. But the one son, when we've gone to Candlemas or any vigil, like with a candle, he'll hold it and just stare at it for like an hour and a half. He doesn't. He's like never been so still in his life. So we're going to do something for him. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Excellent. So we have, then we have Wednesday with St. Blaise, Blessing of the Throats.
Mm-hmm.
Thursday is St. Andrew Corsini. We have St. Agatha on Friday. And then we have, the Japanese martyrs, St. Paul Miki and companions on Saturday. So wonderful Septuagesima. The subject of our conversation, what the devil hates most, comes from a Russian author that I read years ago, Ignaty Bryanchaninov. And this is an Eastern Orthodox author. Now, when I having been Eastern Orthodox, people sometimes ask me, can you read Eastern Orthodox books? And what I usually say is, you can, except if they're talking about anything Western. As soon as they start to talk about anything Western, they lose any sort of objectivity. Not all of them. Many of them are quite objective, but in terms of their spirituality and the Eastern thought, they're simply just talking about the Eastern Fathers and the Desert Fathers and that type of thing. So there's really nothing wrong with any of that stuff. So this is what Ignaty says in the Arena, chapter 48, concerning the special opposition of the fallen spirits to prayer. The fallen spirits obdurately oppose all the commandments of the gospel, but especially prayer as the mother of virtues. The devil continually confronts every servant of God with the purpose of robbing and defiling his offering of prayer and the sacrifice, and finally stopping and frustrating it. The fallen spirits jealously worry and torment us, says St. Anthony the Great, and never stop setting in motion all kinds of evil to prevent us from inheriting their former thrones in heaven. See, the angels, the reason that the fallen angels hate us is because they're envious of the fact that their thrones were forsaken because they rebelled against God in their hierarchy of the angelic choir. They were thrown out of heaven, and then God predestined all of the elect to inherit their thrones. And so the fallen spirits are consumed with envy because the predestinate elect will inherit their thrones. Now, Ignaty goes on to say, he essentially says that the fallen spirits will do anything to stop your prayer. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, he says, only in extreme need, especially if obedience requires it, may the time of appointed prayer be given up for some other occupation. So the important thing is to find a time of prayer and to zealously commit to it
Mhm.
Now, he's talking about monks here in terms of obedience, but we would consider this in terms of the duties of your state in life. So, and I'm going to read a quote from St. Alphonsus on that, because we should zealously guard our prayer time. But then if the duties of our state in life call us, we need to forsake that for the sake of our duties. Our wife or children are in need of any kind.
Mhm.
But one of the things that's interesting to me that he points out is he says the evil spirits organizes his hordes with peculiar skill. Before him, in advance guards stand thoughts clothed in all forms of truth and righteousness, and fantasies are mental images which an inexperienced ascetic can take for harmless and even inspired apparitions, for holy and heavenly visions. When the mind accepts them and by subjecting itself to their influence loses its freedom, and then the commander-in-chief for the foreign paratroops throws into the front line fragrantly sinful thoughts and fantasies. So he's saying that during prayer, the devil will give you all these good thoughts. That he's going to tempt you to go do some other good deed that he thinks is more important than prayer, because he hates prayer more than anything. So he's going to do anything to make you to stop praying and distract you from doing your duty.
Yeah.
And so he says this: it is essential during prayer to enclose the mind in the words of the prayer, rejecting without distinction every thought, both fragrantly sinful ones and also apparently good ones, no matter what the clothing or armor of thought may be. If it distracts you from prayer, then in itself proves that it belongs to the foreign and Philistine army, and that uncircumcised and unclean spirit that has come to insult and defy Israel.
That's
right.
Pretty. I like that guy.
Yeah, he writes in the spirit of the Desert Fathers, this type of militaristic, vanquishing the Canaanites type of thing. So yeah, I think that's an incredible wisdom here that he's bringing straight out of the Desert Fathers here, in that when we consider our prayer, we need to reject everything that comes to distract us, because and as coming from the fallen spirits, because they're trying to do anything they can possibly, even trying to give you to do some lesser good work even. But I think it's a very cunning tactic. But there's another aspect of this, I think, that I wanted to read from St. Alphonsus. He says, this is in the sermon on obedience to confessor. He says this: to obtain salvation, we must follow the will of God in all things. What I ask is necessary in order to save our souls and to become saints. Some imagine that sanctity consists in performing many works of penance. But were a sick man to perform mortifications which expose him to the proximate danger of death, he would instead not become a saint, but be guilty of a very grievous sin. Others think that perfection consists in long and frequent prayers. But should the father of a family neglect the education of his children and go into the desert to pray, he too would commit sin, because although prayer is good, a parent is bound to take care of his children, and he can fulfill the precept of prayer and attention to their instruction without going into the desert. Others believe that holiness consists in frequent communion, but if, in spite of a just command from her husband and to the injury of her family, a married woman wish to communicate every morning, she would act improperly and would have to render an account for her conduct to God. And he says that what is sanctity? It is the fulfillment of the will of God, the perfect fulfillment of the will of God. So when we talk about prayer, we need to balance our duties to God and our duties of our state in life, so that we understand the time of prayer and discerning what is the time of prayer, what is a doable time of prayer, and also fulfilling your duties of your state in life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difficulty, I think, because it's difficult to get into some kind of routine and some kind of ritual so that you're always praying every day without fail. You're not doing too much, you're not doing too little.
Mm-hmm.
So the wisdom that I was given from my late spiritual father was that you think of what you really can do for prayer. A good plumb line is just 15 minutes. You do 15 minutes of prayer every single day, and you do that for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, you realize you can do it every time. You commit to it. You make a more solemn promise to do it every day, barring any duties of your state in life. And then you can also increase or decrease that depending on that. But the point that to start this conversation is that you must pray. The demons will do anything possible to stop you from praying, but we have to also not be led away by the demons, because this is the tactic of the devil to say that if you're not doing X, Y, Z that the saints did, who are not married and had different duties, then you're not really praying, or you're not really doing the Lord's will. And that's a very cunning tactic, because for scrupulous souls who are pious, one can be led away by those as well. So those are my introductory thoughts. What do you think?
Good. I like that writer. You got to send me his name again. Ignacy something. Let me ask you a question though. So when I'm praying frequently, like when I'm praying the rosary, I mean, rosary is pretty much 90% of my prayer life. I love the rosary. But when I'm praying, often I will have other thoughts, but it's kind of like not to go do something else, but almost as if all the things on my mind are getting resolved. Does that make sense? So I'll be praying and like, for example, I've got things I need to write, basically. Usually it's about writing. And then by the time, like in a way, I'm still saying the prayers. I'm still thinking about the mystery of the rosary. But by the time I'm done the 10 beads, for example, I will have the whole article or chapter of a book will be completely done in my head. So it's almost but it makes me want to pray more, because it's almost as if God's clarifying everything that I have been trying to figure out in a way that I couldn't have done on my own, if that makes sense. And then as far as state in life, Father Isaac has this one. Father Isaac is a Liguorian, like his spiritual father is Saint Alphonsus. Everything Father Isaac talks about is Saint Alphonsus, basically, and he has a more let's say layman's terms way of talking about state in life. And in one of his talks on the Four Last Things, he says, he talks about a mother, and he goes, "I don't care if you're in adoration, 4 hours a day." He says, "I'll go to a woman's house and she's in adoration 4 hours a day, doing, novenas every day." And then he's like, "I got to kick the door in to get it open because the house is so messy." He's like, "I can't get in the door." He's like, but his point was, it doesn't mean anything if you're going to miss your duties of state. And the same thing could be for a father with, whatever you're trying to do. So yeah, I believe everything you said was correct. And, the trick is finding, especially with little kids, 15 minutes a day or whatever you're going to have, whatever you're going to do. What do you do? What do you recommend as far as, because like for me, for a morning routine, let's say I get up early, whatever, and going to do my work and things. I have a daily meditation book. It's actually on my shelf. I should have brought it over. But Father Z recommends it actually. I can't remember. I think it's just called Daily Meditations. Or Meditations for Every Day of the Year. I actually can't remember the name of it, but it's really good. It's written like 1960 or something like that. So it's got a classic sort of spirituality to it. And I read that every morning and do either 3 decades of the Rosary to start the morning, or I do. I have that Christian warfare book, and in there they have sort of a lay version of the Divine Office for the morning. And that's about 15 minutes, pretty much right there.
Yeah. Concerning the distractions, I mean, I think that there are, St. Ignatius is quite hardcore in the saying that we should reject every single thought as coming from evil spirits. Now, part of that goes into what,
he's a monk too, like that would make.
There's other aspects of this too. But Lorenzo Scopoli, it reminds me of Lorenzo Scopoli when he talks about apparitions, and he says that we should always distrust apparitions and always consider them to be demonic, even if they're actually from God, simply because we need to think about we are not worthy of we're not worthy of apparitions, we're not worthy of visions, and to distrust them and then go to our confessor and say, "Here's what happened." And then the confessor can give you his judgment on that. because too often
Right.
one
Right.
can have a vision and then be inflated with pride, and then that causes a serious deception. But in much more ordinary cases, I think the same principle applies, because if you're getting any distraction of any kind, like you're writing, I think that it can be, I think it's just wise to take that as if it might not be from God, and then just take whatever you're thinking about it and then offer that up in prayer. Like use it as a means towards offering that all. Something's coming to you, you've got some kind of inspiration. So then you pause in whatever you're praying. You say, okay, I offer this to you, Lord. If it's from you, then direct me towards that, or whatever, So just always bringing it back to God. I think that's, and using it as humility, especially if your distracting thoughts don't appear to be any sort of inspiration. Like if you're just distracted to do, I got to do this, got to do laundry, got to do whatever, or
Right.
something like that. Then you can always use those for humility, because I think this passage from Bergamo, I've read this many times in the show, but it bears repeating because it's so excellent. He says, we often, this is page 91, paragraph 72. We often lament that we are unable to pray because of the many distractions which hinder our recollection and dry up the source of devotion in our hearts. But in this we err and do not know what we are saying. The best prayer is not that in which we are most recollected and fervent, but in which we are most humble. Because it is written, the prayer of him that humbleth himself shall pierce the clouds. And what distractions of mind and heart can prevent our exercising humility? So I think I was taught. One of my confessors said to me that distractions in prayer should always be used for humility, because you get distracted and then you realize you're distracted, and then you say, Lord, look how much I need you. Look how much I need your grace to pray, because I'm so distracted by all these things. Or if you're feeling like an inspiration, like you're mentioning, I mean, I think that always turning that back to prayer keeps your focus on that, so that you're offering everything up to him.
Right.
This is another great book, Difficulties in Mental Prayer, that I'm not finding the quote exactly. It's in here somewhere, but he talks about the distractions where bearing with distractions is very meritorious, especially for when we're taking all our kids to mass and we're trying to pray and we're juggling them. And it's for parents, it's meritorious to offer up those distractions and those difficulties. You're not entering the inner castle. You're not entering the ninth stage of the inner castle in ecstasy. You are juggling children. So it's very meritorious. It's very pleasing to God to offer up those distractions. So that's what I thought. What do you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen. I mean, our kids are now old enough where the three oldest ones can at least stay in the pew while we go up to receive communion, and we carry the baby, obviously. So, I mean, by the time I get back to the pew, I'm still not done. Like, the Eucharist is still in my mouth in some fashion, and I'm already having to like regulate their behavior. You know what I mean? Like, there's no I mean, there is no time for, or I'm going to the crying room, I mean, there's no time to, I don't know, enter into an ecstatic experience. Not that I've ever had one, but, so it's like, whenever I get back to the pew, for example, and I'm like, sometimes because of the one child, all the children are different. And the one child, I want to go up for communion. I want to go up for communion. I want to come for confession. I want to come for confession. That's how he says it. And, depending on his mood, he might cry the whole time or like sit there kind of quietly sobbing while we're going up there for communion, as he calls it. And when we get back, I've got to like calm him down. And I'm like, as I said, I still have the Eucharist in my mouth in some way, so I can't talk. So I'm like quiet. Anyway, at that point, I just go, oh, thank you, Lord, for the patience you've given me, because I have to, it's like, I really have to behave right now because I'm still trying to finish consuming the Eucharist. So it's kind of like a good reminder. So that's meritorious as a parent, I guess. And then I guess I think about that, the graces you receive for your state in life. That's a very explicit example of God giving you graces for your state in life when you're still trying to consume communion and parent your children. So that makes perfect sense. And that's, I think the theme right now that we're getting at is, there's been such a dismantling of the life of a layperson since the changes, 50, 60 years ago. And everything has been done from scratch. Everything is new, new evangelization, new everything. And there's nothing wrong with a renewal, but one of the things that's been lost is the rhythms of life. It's funny, you look at these movements or whatever, Opus Dei, that kind of thing, for how to make people have a lay spiritual life. And people act as if it's some big innovation. And then you just look back at what your lay spiritual life would have been in the great ages of faith. And obviously people could have individual devotion. And I'm not saying everybody's holy, but Angelus. Oh, by the way, we do the Angelus 3 times a day. That's a big thing for our family. At every meal. That's what we used to try. I used to try to do it at 6, 12, and 6, but I would always forget at 6 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I said, why don't I just do it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Perfect. You think about the life of a Catholic. I mean, you would have the Angelus bells. You'd probably hear in your village. You would hear Mass very often. You would go to confession as a rule more than you would go to communion. You would pray the Rosary probably every day. You had quiet because you didn't have technology. That was a big thing as well.
Quiet.
So, I mean, you look at all these, again, programs for lay spiritual life, and they talk as if it's some innovation. And I'm like, really, that's just a distillation of stuff that everyone did for a long time.
I think that's remarkable. I mean, it is really quite astonishing when you visit a monastery or you go to the country, just go to the country, mm-hmm. and you're just like, wow, it's so quiet. I recently picked up Cardinal Sarah's book, The Power of Silence. And I think it's a profound spiritual work, very important for our time. And like what you're saying, there's just silence. It's incredible how much noise there really is. That's when it's really interesting. I found this quote from, this is Eugene Boylan, this Difficulties in Mental Prayer. This is, I don't know, this was like 1940 something, 1944. Here's what he says on page 81. If a soul goes to prayer in order to give itself to God, with its mind made up to attend to God and to nothing else as far as it can do so, and is resigned to whatever trials and aridity or distraction that providence permits, its prayer, even though it seems to be a complete failure and almost waste of time, is nevertheless a most pleasing holocaust to God's sight, which will bring down many graces upon the soul and advance it much towards union with God. Mm-hmm. I think that is the passage for parents at Mass. That's also a mentality. For a practical example, I have that mentality for working out. Jocko Willink, that Navy SEAL, whatever. He's insane, but I mean, he's a Navy SEAL. So, but he posts his workout picture every morning, not of him, but just he wakes up at 4:30 and works out, whatever. And he always has a picture of starting the workout, like a picture of his watch. Actually, Steven Crowder, he makes fun of Jocko all the time. He goes, this morning, Jocko Willink, he posted a picture of his watch, 4:30, and he's like, but people don't know that after that, he just went back to bed. But after his workout, he'll always post a picture of the dumbbells or whatever it is, the sweat on the ground. And he'll always have a quote, But the one day he said something, and it was one of those little pieces of advice. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. And he said, just went through the motions today. But then caps lock, he's like, but at least I went through the motions. And it's true. That's how I feel about working out. I'll be exhausted or something, and I'll be like, I'm not going to work out today. I'm fine. And I'll just say, nope, I'm just going to go out to the garage. And literally, if I only do jumping jacks and push-ups, I did more than I was going to do. And then after I feel so good that I did it, and objectively speaking, it's good for you. And mentally speaking, it's good for you as well. And spiritually, because it's a form of mortification. So the same thing is with the spiritual life,
man, I'll tell you, as a, we all struggle with our vices, and mine has always been my temper growing up. Italian, we're red blooded and steam coming out of our ears by definition. And, and one thing that really makes you, have control of your passions is prayer, and not just the aspect of the spiritual, but I mean the habit. It's like your kids are annoying you or something, and it's like, well, we're going to pray the rosary now as a family. You are much better off when you're done the rosary, and you are much gentler when you're done the rosary with your family, because you have to be. I mean, it's like, imagine that, like if you could go to daily mass, let's say if you could go to daily mass every day and you were committed to receiving the Eucharist every time you went, you would just by definition, assuming you were being honest with yourself, okay, you would by definition just be so much better off living in a state of grace because of the habit itself, because I'm going to go to communion only if I'm in a state of grace, sort of thing, which means I'm going to go to confession often. Same thing with you're trying to, be a better husband, be a better father. Well, if you're going to pray with your family every day, then it's a defense mechanism against hypocrisy. It's a defense mechanism against laziness or sloth in your virtuous, in the life of virtue, because it's a clear contradiction to you and your family if you're not doing it right. And it's extremely humbling. And it's honestly, it's so funny, man, why can't people just be Catholic and just like, I've just started thinking about all the world's problems, and we just heard about someone we know, just sort of through indirectly, but a young person our age, just married 4 years ago, 5 years ago or something, and they're already getting divorced. And a lot of it really, I mean, yeah, problems, but a lot of it was exacerbated by the lockdown. Let's be honest. Shout out Family Be Damned. That's kind of the theme of that book and whatever. But really, I'm thinking like, and they're not practicing Christians of any sort, really. And but the one guy's a really nice guy, just as a nice guy. We were like, man, he's a good guy. And I'm just thinking of what's happening in their family, and we're hearing about the custody problems and stuff. And it's like, oh my. But I'm thinking all of that would be solved by the faith. All of it. Like, it's just, I heard what's happening. I'm like, all of it is disorder in the marriage. All of it is the roles being usurped by the wife and the husband acquiescing. Like, all of it is anti the faith. And I'm just thinking, as we talk about prayer, man, everything would be solved if people would just be Christian. Anyway, that's a tangent.
Yeah, I absolutely. I love what you're saying about the family prayer routine being a check against hypocrisy. That's beautiful. I think getting into the daily routine of praying the rosary as a family is often quite distracting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty much a fiasco for if you have younger children. But it's been a remarkable. I actually read it in Kwasniewski's book on recovering our Catholic birthright. Shout out to Dr. Peter Kwasniewski and all his good work. He mentioned how important, speaking of the Mass, he's mentioned how great it was to do the family rosary because you can be more disciplinary with your children during the family rosary, because nobody's gonna, there's nobody else watching who's gonna be distracted when you discipline your children, or pause everything and just stop and just deal with a kid or whatever. So that's I've definitely seen a change in my 5-year-old, because he's the one who's hardest at Mass, or can often be the worst. And as we've done this family rosary and really gotten on him to just sit in one place and read a book and all this, try to at least stay relatively still, it's definitely improved his Mass attendance. And that's definitely been a great help to get the basic motions going for him. I think there's definitely such an impact that fathers can play when children see their fathers praying. I remember when I was very young, seeing my father pray. That's just something that when a young boy sees his father praying, I think there's just something about that just lasts and it makes an impact.
That's interesting. What you're saying about disciplining your children through prayer. When we first started praying the Family Rosary, like we've grown a lot. I mean, if anyone's read my first book, like, I mean, up until 2015, I was basically living like a secular person. I mean, it's only been 5.5, 6 years of, 2014. No, wait, 2015. Sorry. It's only been 5.5, 6 years of taking the faith seriously. And so we've grown a lot, obviously. A lot has changed in our marriage and stuff. But anyway, when we first started, a couple of years ago, starting to think about praying the Family Rosary and how we pray the Rosary with our kids and whatever. And discipline issues would come up, like with Mass. And my wife was worried, and we were both worried, but as the mother, she was kind of like, well, we don't want to turn the Rosary or Mass into something they're not going to like, that kind of mentality. And we just thought about it, and we thought, if I was their coach, obviously, I'm sure they like hockey or they like football or whatever, fine. But they might not. I mean, the point is, I would still be on their case. I would still be disciplining them as a coach. I would still be making them do things that they didn't want to do at that moment because I knew it was better for them as an athlete. And they would thank me for it later, because that's what you do with as a player. It's always how it works. Or, I don't worry that they're not going to like dinner because I teach them table manners. They're just going to like food. Now, I know people will say, yeah, but people love food. People don't like praying. Well, that's not true, for one. But again, you make your kids eat their vegetables, and then later they thank you for it eventually because they don't have diabetes, and or their teeth don't fall to their head. They might not even like sports that much. That's the thing too. I mean, getting little kids, like my little kids just learned to skate this year. One of the nice things about the lockdown, if I'm trying to be positive here, okay. We have a river in town, beautiful river downtown. I live in a beautiful town, and no one's skated on that river in a long time because our city is like, obviously, yeah, hockey. Everyone loves hockey in Canada, but I live in one of those towns that's like actually a hockey town. It's like it's the sport for the kids, hockey and baseball, and so there's tons of amateur hockey here. Like it's packed. I mean, tournaments, everything, but there's none of that this year. So people are going to the river to skate because their rinks are closed. And it's ironic. I mean, we live in a cold town and no one's been skating on the frozen river, which is right downtown and is 5 or 6 kilometers long. No one's skated on it in years, but this year they are, which is cool. So anyway, we've been skating a lot, and I taught my kids, and they like it, but at the same time, they do complain because their feet hurt or whatever. And I push them through it, and now they can skate better. And now they can use their little hockey sticks and chase a tennis ball around on the ice. But I could have just not pushed them in it, and they wouldn't have received the benefits. And the same thing really goes for prayer, as it does anything in life. And what a better time to discipline your kids than while you're praying, because again, you yourself are saying, well, I'm holding a rosary right now. I can't be a total jerk holding a rosary, or I'm trying to tell my kids that like we love Jesus. I better like show my kids I love them properly while disciplining them. It really is a sign of contradiction for your behavior. And God will give you the graces. It's not just not from just a natural perspective, but you are praying and you're disciplining your kids while praying. It's kind of how God designed things,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you wanted to, you had some thoughts from Saint Maximilian Colby, Immaculata, the Ideal.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
This book right here, it's called the Immaculata, Our Ideal by Father Carl Stellan. And publisher is, let me see here. Well, it says Colby Publications. I think it's just a independent publisher. Father Carl Stellan, he's based in Poland, I believe, Eastern Europe. He's a society priest, but anyway, so you can get this online. It's not from Angelus Press. I think they print it in Singapore, weirdly enough. Anyway, so I don't know how long the book's going to take to get to you, because of it's not like an Amazon Prime thing, I don't think. So anyway, I would recommend this book for Lent. I mean, we're 20 days or 30 days out from Lent, I guess. So get this book for Lent. So maybe order it now, because it might take 2 or 3 weeks just based on being weird shipping. And St. Maximilian Kolbe is my new favorite saint. I don't know how I wrote Terror of Demons without reading St. Maximilian Kolbe. I'm shocked. Like, I'm disappointed in myself. And I think when I one day or republish it or something and do a second edition, I'm going to have a section. Like, I honestly think I'm just going to add an appendix on St. Maximilian Kolbe. And
why is Saint Maximilian Colby so great?
Oh, so many reasons. For one, look at his beard. Okay.
True. Good point.
Well, I mean, he's a true Franciscan, for one, and
true Franciscan. That's exactly right. Yeah,
that's huge. I mean, of all the saints that has been co-opted by modernism and St. Francis of Assisi.
What a great saint. What a great saint. I mean, truly amazing.
He really is amazing.
Yeah.
There's so few good friends. There's so few true Franciscans left. Come on. If you're a Franciscan and you're doing a TikTok video, stop. Priests, do not do TikTok videos. Oh my goodness. Anyway, dancing and lockdowns. Come on, man. Anyway, Francis of Assisi used to throw himself into like a bramble bush to fight off temptations against chastity, and you're literally dancing to some song in a video. Like, just stop. Anyway, and I won't even get into Father Casey. So, but Father Isaac is a friend of mine, and he's an amazing priest. He's one of the true Franciscans left. Anyway, he recommends St. Maximilian Kolbe all the time. Okay. And one thing about St. Maximilian Kolbe is St. Maximilian Kolbe has been one of those really watered down saints. We know him as the Saint of Auschwitz, which he was. But he gets co-opted as the sort of, that's all people think about, you know. But he was a champion against communism, Zionism, politically incorrect, I know. And Freemasonry, really real champion. You read his writings, they're not politically correct at all, which is why they're amazing. And a lot of what he wrote was in Polish. The magazine, I think it was called, I can't remember what the magazine's translated to in English. I can't pronounce the word in Polish. Those funny Polish words. Anyway, he had his magazine or his newsletter, whatever you want to call it. He was prolific. I mean, he had volumes and volumes, years and years and years. And he started the Militia Immaculata, which is like the Knights of the Immaculata, basically, is what it means. And Father Stellan is one of the most prolific translators of Kolbe into English. I think Father Stellan speaks 5 or 6 languages properly, 5 or 6 languages fluently. And he translates all of his stuff into them. So he's the main wealth of information on Kolbe. So he has this book, the Immaculata Ordeal, and he just goes through what it would mean to actually be a knight in the Militia Immaculata, which is a confraternity, but it's hard to find one. Again, one of those things that's been watered down after the council, unfortunately. So it's hard to find a true one. But either way, it's a spirituality. It's a way of being. So I like this because I'm living in communism. So it speaks to me. And I'll read a little passage here, just translated from one of his editions of the magazine, from actually 1924 and 1933. So he says, knighthood, battle. That all sounds very warlike, because it is indeed a war. Not a war conducted with rifles, bombs, tanks, and poison gas, but still a real war. What is our strategy? Above all, it is prayer. We must overcome our rigidity and get out of this defensive posture. Freemasonry and free thinking fight against God and faith. want to make men into base animals and barbarians who destroy what is sacred. So let us too fight, with the means that are permitted, of course, not only to defend ourselves and our neighbors from becoming paganized, but also so that Mary might reign over the hearts of all men. For then the kingdom of Christ comes to them. Anyway, that's just pretty good. So that's just like one of, I mean, I'm only on page 50 of this, or 70, I guess, of this book. And if you, one of the reasons why I recommend this book, because if I could read some of the chapter titles here, if there's a table of contents, which I don't think there is. There's not. Anyway, every chapter is about an aspect of becoming more chivalrous. Like, so for example, militia versus pacifism is the first chapter. And each chapter is themed like that in the sense that, okay, what does it actually mean to be a knight, meaning a true warrior? And not in a LARPy sense, like we call ourselves knights because it's like Renaissance fair, which is fine, but in a true sense of your spiritual life. And anyway, there's tons in there for that. So I recommend everyone get that. St. Maximilian Colby is the saint for our time.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to our Polish brethren. We have Marta Drella says,
That's what that means. Okay.
Richurge Neapokala Nej.
Yeah.
Night of the Immaculate.
I probably should have known that, but yeah.
I'm sure I've butchered that Polish, but that is the Polish.
Yeah.
Night of the Immaculate. Excellent. Immaculata are ideal. Let's see. What do we want to touch on? 10 minutes left. Any questions, thoughts, comments, objections?
I will say one more thing though. Just also, we're in a time of persecution. And who knows, honestly, who knows what's going to happen? Some areas on earth, it looks like far right movements in the good sense are building up because people are just sick of secular communism. So that'll be interesting to see. But in a place like Canada, maybe I'll have mass in a normal sense back again. I doubt it for a long time. I don't know. Honestly, who knows? Maybe I won't. Maybe I will. Either way, persecution is here for some of us, or it's coming, or who knows. So I've really gotten into reading the Missal when we can't go to mass. And I think we underestimate just how amazing it is to pray the Missal. Just read it. Just read it, pray it, whatever. Read it, pray it. And there's such a wealth of prayer in here. And it really helps you read the Psalms. And Father Ripperger and his protocol against possession, he actually has those people read the Missal every day, read the Mass every day, because the demons really hate the Mass, obviously. And so reading the Mass is a huge benefit to your prayer life.
Yeah, you can also unite your reading of the Mass to the real Mass, which is being offered somewhere in the world. Mm-hmm. Certainly. Someone's asking about Father Calloway. Do you know Father Calloway?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thoughts on Father Calloway, Kennedy? I don't know who they're talking about.
So Father Calloway is he's the priest who wrote the Consecration of Saint Joseph. And he's written books on the Rosary and things. Father Calloway is an enigma because he is a big fan of Medjugorje, which is a problem. And he's a member of the MICM. What is that? The divine? No, they're Mary Immaculate. Oh, something or other. I think his order is in charge of the Divine Mercy Shrine or something like that in Washington. They're one of those orders that are like the best of the Novus Ordo orders, like, I mean that. I'm not being facetious here. They really are. Like, I think he does the Novus Ordo Mass, but he's also started wearing a cassock and growing a big beard and stuff. Who knows? It's a strange time to be alive. So some of the stuff he says, like, put it to you this way. I'm not judging the man, and I shouldn't be speaking about him like I'm an authority. Just from a perspective of traditionalism, he has supernatural faith. He really believes and believes the right things and says the right things about the Rosary and sort of things like that. Like, none of my traditionalist sensibilities are piqued by him when he talks about the Rosary. I'm going to do the Consecration of Saint Joseph starting on February 15th. I have the book. I've never done it. People say it's great. I'm going to do it. And it'll end on the feast day on March 19th. So we live in this weird, we live in the devastated vineyard of the Second Vatican Council. So sometimes I urge my fellow traditionalists to open their mind a little bit, because there are so many that we're so far removed from the council. We're so far removed from the changes that so many people of goodwill, like Father Calloway, Father Mark Gorin, for example, charismatic priest, like they've grown up with no understanding of traditionalism, like we all did. And they've done an amazing job through the weeds of the problems. Okay. Father Calloway, in my opinion, is one of those. So he's an enigma, because he'll be the kind of guy who will do a talk at Steubenville or something, very sort of, modern conservative charismatic Catholicism. But then at the same time, he'll be on Mike Church's show, and him and Mike Church are buddies. And it's just, he just is a good priest, and he has lots of really great things to say. And even again, for traditionalist sensibilities, when you read his works, he'll quote a saint, he'll quote a conciliar pope or something that you might not like that much, but because his faith is so strong, he just quotes the good stuff, if that makes sense, So I think he's great. And I would urge any traditionalists to give him a shot, because I think he's an ally.
Yeah, I agree. Everything he said, that's absolutely right. I love it. Adam's wondering, can we have your thoughts on Father Casey's abortion video?
I haven't watched it, and I won't watch it. I have better things to do in my life. Father Casey, pray for his soul. He's a priest, and he did a video called "Abortion is Not caps lock that important." Even if you're trying to be cute.
I've already deleted the video at that point.
Yeah. Well, even if you're trying to be cute, and apparently the theme of the video is like, he's not saying abortion's not extremely important. He's saying you can't make the pro-life movement an idol. Okay, sure. Thanks, but yes, we worship the pro-life movement, you moron. Anyway, so just any priest who's going to use the topic of abortion as clickbait, go be a priest, dude. Go do holy things. Anyway, grow a beard. You're a Franciscan. That's my final thought. Not him.
Yes. Yes. All due respect to all in priestly orders, good and bad alike. Certainly. The murder of children, the unborn Holocaust is that issue. It is the most important issue, period. The unborn Holocaust. Stop the unborn Holocaust. Ban abortion.
Yeah. Full stop.
That's the end of it. Okay. Let me see. Somebody's asking. There's also the pre-1955 missal. I saw you had Father Lassance. Wonderful. I have the Angelus Missal, which I love, but it has the 55 reform. If you're not familiar, there's actually a video Taylor Marshall and I did on this topic, the 1955 Holy Week reform. A lot of little subtle changes, but significant. It was kind of the proto Novus Ordo before the Novus Ordo was a thing in 1955. So it's great to have the pre-1955, certainly. Any other thoughts? I wanted to just once again bring it back to the Rosary. And the Rosary is the best all-time prayer. And the reason is because it combines vocal prayer with mental prayer. Mm-hmm. Mental prayer is a higher form of prayer than vocal prayer. Vocal prayer is merely speaking. Yeah. In terms of vocal prayer, you can do formal prayer, which is reciting the prayers we do in this show, which is the rote prayers we memorize. And there's also just extemporaneous prayers, and it's important to do both, because the formal prayers keep you from being too distracted and being blown around with distractions or whatever. Formalized prayers, but they're also extemporaneous prayers, just spontaneous prayers that you pray to God throughout the day or at any time. Also keep your heart affected towards God, your heart, your will, lifting your mind and will to God from your heart, so that you're speaking truly from the heart to God, and not simply praying what others pray, but also praying your own personal prayers to God. And that's a very important thing. And this is something sometimes Catholics think that that's some kind of Protestant thing. It's not. It's not Protestant to say a spontaneous prayer, especially privately, to God, because you're truly opening up your own heart, your own mind, your emotions, whatever it is.
Yep.
You're giving that to God, and you are giving your heart to God. You're opening your heart to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So that's very important. But the rosary is so crucial because it incorporates mental prayer, because you are really focusing your images on particular things. And what's incredible is, and when you just start focusing your mind on all these holy things, prayer just becomes boring. All right, sorry, not prayer. Sin becomes boring, was what I'm trying to say. The temptations, the sins, they just become boring because you're so wrapped up in the mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
And the mysteries begin to captivate you. One final thought on extemporaneous prayer I wanted to mention, and that is praying during your empty moments, that I've found very impactful, which is practicing the presence of God between your duties. You're doing one thing, you just gave the kid breakfast, now you got to put his clothes on him. So we're going to move from this activity to that activity. And during that time, you can lift your mind to God.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing to recollect yourself, because you got to focus on one thing, but then in between focusing on this thing and focusing on that thing, you can lift your mind to God. So any final thoughts, Kennedy?
Yeah, two, maybe three. No, one, my wife, she was talking to a friend who's really holy, amazing woman, raised a wonderful, faithful Catholic family. And so my wife, we're in the thick of it, 4 little kids, you understand. And so my wife is like feeling bad. Oh, I'm not reading enough, or this, that, and other thing. So she talks to her one friend who is holy. I mean holy. I don't just mean like, not just prayerful, but holy woman, where it's like, oh, your personality is almost perfect somehow because you've been sanctified through all your life of prayer. Anyway, she's thinking, oh, so and so must pray all the time and whatever. And she basically asked her, she's like, so what was it like? I mean, you're a farmer, you got 9 kids, whatever. And she's like, I probably read like 3 whole books in 5 years. She's like, I had books by saints, and I would pick it up when I had a moment, and I would read 3 sentences. So she said she loved books that were actual saint books, so there's lots of quotes in there by the saints. And she said I would just chew on that while I was doing the laundry, point being is that her prayer life made her state in life so much better. It wasn't her prayer life served her family. That's I think the trajectory you have to understand for all of us. Okay. And that my wife loved that. And it's not just a cliche. Okay. You can make your life a prayer because it's an offering to God. Also, extemporaneous prayer. There's always a balance, as Catholics. I mean, okay, I don't want to go off and pretend I'm some charismatic preacher and, have prophetic utterances, but at the same time, I need to pray from the heart, like there's always this balance. There's tons of ejaculatory prayers that you can learn, just invocations, whatever, and they become your own as well. And then also, I mean, like, so how many times, something hard is going on, you just kind of go, Lord, what you doing? And you just have to have that dialogue in your head, and that's it. And also the Psalms were a spontaneous prayer. Okay. I mean, that was King David crying out to God from the heart. And obviously for us, they're not spontaneous because they're already written down, but the Psalms are a way of praying. It's a manner of praying, if that makes sense. So reading the Psalms, I think, will also help you with your own spontaneous prayer. And then final thing, speaking of quiet, and I'm guilty of this and I'm working on it. Getting rid of the phone for various periods of the day is important. Unfortunately, let's be honest, you and I couldn't do this or publish the books and things like that, to be honest, if we didn't have Signal and voice message. Like it really is, it makes it possible to do these things remotely. We've never met in person. Tim and I, we've had plans to meet in person, but I've been under 2 weeks to slow the spread for so long, and I can't. Yeah. Now they're saying they're going to do anal swab tests and stuff. I'm never leaving the country.
Oh, no. What?
Oh, seriously. So, I mean, I mean, if there was a quote unquote essential reason, I could drive to the States or something. But anyway, the point is, Tim and I live 4 hours away from each other. I live closer to Tim than I do to some people that I see in my own province, and I can't go visit. That's how free we are. But anyway, we talk all the time, and obviously the phone is really important for that. However, I just have gotten the habit. I'm like, I just got to go plug it in upstairs, and at 6 o'clock or whatever it is, and then I'll set my alarm before I go to bed. I'll answer all my messages at 9 o'clock when the kids are down or something. But you got to do those sorts of things, and it really does give you an interior quiet when you get rid of that thing. It's huge.
Oh yeah. That's a big one we didn't really touch on. Yeah, putting away the phone. Absolutely. So we're going to be talking about the 3 weapons in preparation for Lent: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And so stay tuned. Make sure that you are thinking about the great fast of Lent. Here we are in Septuagesima. So let's pray for the preparation for a good and holy Lent. It's a very great time to do Lent, I think.
Yeah, it is.
In the situation that we're in. This is the response of Christians. This is how we do battle with the true enemy, who is Satan.
Yeah.
That our brethren may be liberated from his grasp and turn from being communists to being Catholics. Let's pray. Nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Pater noster qui es in caelis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra.
Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, et dimitti nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Amen.
In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Through the prayers of our holy fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen.